Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is the advanced session of the Synergy Open Forum training. Let me share my screen. Lucy's here assisting me in the back end with the questions. So we have been getting some queries regarding finding rubrics, and there are a few rubrics that were mentioned as people having trouble finding them. So I'm just going to start up with that, and maybe that will also spark sort of similar questions for you where you've been stuck finding rubrics for cases or homework, as the case may be. So the first rubric was never well since menopause. So there's a couple different ways to handle this. We have this etiology in homeopathy, never well since, and it can be, different things. It can be head injury or hormonal events is always a big one, whether it's never well since puberty or never well since childbirth or never well since menopause. So never well since is a familiar and important rubric in homeopathy. So the way I would search for a specific one is, it's always better to go broad. And so I would really just type in the global search, which is my favorite part of the program, never well. And then I would just hit enter. And so you can see there isn't much. Also, never well since is a generalities. You haven't been well since this event happened in your life. That is a generality. So you'll see all of the repertories that show up. It will be a generalities rubric, regardless of the repertory. Although I guess Nair has it in skin, and Clark's calls it temperaments. And then Fatak is just Fatak because we don't have sections there. But you can see that for the first search result, complete, there isn't really much. But when you go to the reliable, you can see it's in generalities, but they've put it in convalescence. But you can see that you have never well since several different events. There's typhoid and pneumonia and influenza, so all sorts of acutes, diphtheria, chest affections, burn. But there is climaxis, which is another term for menopause. And there is one remedy here. Also abortion. And then I think these have been taken actually directly from Fatak. So you can see that Fatak has all of these exactly. And so this is, one way to look for it. And then you can, find the one that you're looking for, the event that you're looking for. If you want to search specifically for menopause, then I would just type never well since menopause. And then I know that the other two synonyms for menopause in homeopathy are climaxis and climacteric period. So we don't have to type period, but I would just put climacteric and then run that. Let's run that as a separate search. And you see, so the reliable rubric, which was taken from Fata, comes up with that remedy. And, that is the original Fatak rubric. But interestingly, if you go to the reference library, because I ran the search for both, you can see you actually get never well since menopause, never well since climaxis, etc., etc. And it's all lachesis, which is the same remedy as we saw coming up in the repertory search. But there are several references. That's Gunavante, Vermeulen, Murphy, Fatak's rep, and this one is the Materia Medica, Fatak's concise Materia Medica. So there are multiple references which all say that lachesis is the primary and only remedy for never well since menopause. I wonder, so this person was able to find, this user was able to find this rubric in Radar. I wonder what the remedy in Radar was, or if there were more remedies than just lachesis. So that's one rubric that was hard to find for someone. The other rubric that came up, unless there are questions, are there any questions?
No questions yet.
Okay. So the easiest thing when you're looking for a rubric and you're not sure what the homeopathic term might be, just type a few words from that rubric into the global search bar, and things will come up, and that will give you an idea to go further, and you can sort of like, feel the search out from there. Another query that came in about a hard to find rubric was this sort of extreme urging for urine. And how do you find that? So for that, I would just, it's obviously an extreme urge for urine would be in the bladder section. So I would limit it right away to the bladder section instead of looking everywhere. And then because it's like an urgent, really urgent desire, and we know that desire for urine or needing to go to the bathroom is represented with urging, then I would just put this. I prefer to keep the search kind of broader and looser, and then see what comes up and then refine further. If you narrow out the search too much right away in the beginning and you don't get anything, that can be discouraging. So I would, and then it's also very limiting. Even if you get some results, they might be very limited. So it's better to keep the search sort of broader and looser, and see what you can. It's like going fishing. So I think I've used that, see what comes up. So if I do that, you see, then you've got sort of the initial rubrics, and then urging is, comes after pain. So we're going to scroll through past all of the pain rubrics, and you can see that the first rubric for wanting to go to the bathroom, wanting to go urinate, is an urgent desire. It's mentioned in the repertory as a morbid desire to urinate. So, and then of course there's all the concomitants that come with it: timing, location, sensation, modality, concomitants. Constant extreme urge to urine, all sorts of other things that you can look at, during different things at different times, etc., etc. So this was a second query that had come on how to find a rubric. And so we're going to clear out of that search. I'm going to clear out of the never well since as well. Okay, so the other thing in terms of finding rubrics, and I had a small instance of it this morning. I had a flu case come in the morning before I started the training, and the key symptoms of that case, without going through into the whole case, other than fever and all of the common flu things, the peculiar symptoms were that the patient has a lot of gas, and so there's a lot of burping and flatulence, which they don't normally have. It's not a complaint in their regular case. And then they also have some nausea, and they have no desire to eat whatsoever. And so it's really more of a GI type, GI focused influenza, because all of the symptoms are GI symptoms, but it's not a typical sort of vomiting and diarrhea. It's not like a stomach flu. It's more burping and flatulence and mild nausea, and then complete loss of appetite. So I started to look at, started to just repertorize the case. And so I was looking for eructations within 4 words of influenza. So this is what I looked at, and there was no result found. So I said, okay. So then I looked at flatulence within 4 words of influenza, and I could only come up with 1 rubric, and it's really a concomitant with constipation, and the patient had not mentioned any constipation. So I didn't have much to go on. And so I said, okay, well, since these are stomach rubrics and rectum rubrics, let me try something else. And so what I did was I went to stomach and I limited it. And I said, okay, show me all the influenza rubrics in stomach. So what kinds of things have happened during the flu that are related to the stomach. So I just typed stomach influenza. And so now I've got stomach, thirstlessness, vomiting, not a case with my patient, right? So I went to the reliable, and I find that I usually end up using the reliable for acutes. I think it has a much greater breadth of rubrics for acutes. And so you can see I have appetite, wanting, defective, lost, and that is one of the rubrics. Then you see disordered, emptiness. So actually, very interestingly, they have an empty feeling, but with no desire to eat. So in fact, I found both of those rubrics in here. And then I found nausea. So you can already see nausea in influenza is antimonium tart. And then you can see the empty, hollow feeling, antimonium tart. And then appetite, wanting, lost in influenza, antimonium tart. So already I'm getting an idea of what remedy might be needed. But I'm looking pain, retching, thirst, and vomiting. I still don't see anything in eructations or flatulence. I don't have a rubric, and I don't know if antimonium tart has any such rubrics for influenza. So I'm gonna pick the ones that work. I still don't want to give a remedy just based on these 3 things, even though, in many cases, it's either the only remedy or one of 2 in this one. But I like where it's going. So the other thing, so then from here, I'm like, okay, so how can I find out? So there's 2 things to do, right? I could go into the reverse repertory for antimonium tart and look and see if there are flatulence or eructations rubrics, just in general, because if they were there for influenza, it would come up already. So I could, from here, I can say, okay, view remedy in reference library. And then when I come up here, I'm going to look for, I don't want the acute reversed. So let's see, I'll just go reliable, and there we are, reliable reversed. And I want to look at the stomach symptoms. And you see, so this now, and when I hover over the blue bar, you can see at the bottom of the screen, it says antimonium tart, and we are in the reliable reversed, and I'm in the stomach section. And I want to just see if there are, for the stomach, I want to see if there are eructation rubrics. And we can also, obviously, we can also look in abdomen. So I'm going down, I've got convulsions, diarrhea, distension, the empty feeling, which we found. And here we go. There are plenty of eructation rubrics. And I think if you have a knowledge of the remedy, you know that it's it's, you know, it's not usually, it's a very famous pneumonia remedy, but I don't generally tend to think of it as a GI remedy. It's more of a lung respiratory remedy. That's how I think of it. But I also know that its cousin, Antimonium crudum, is a big GI remedy. So this is a good way to like look. You can see that there are many eructation rubrics, but we couldn't find anything in influenza. And then if we look at abdomen and go down to E, eruptions. So there is one eructation rubric. And then if we go down to rectum, and now I'm looking for flatulence rubrics. So diarrhea, here we go. So there is a decent amount of flatulence rubrics. What would be really cool is if we could find eructations and flatulence during influenza, but as you can see in the search, we haven't come up with anything. So the other idea from here I had was to look at, instead of using the word influenza, I decided to look for eructations within 3 words of fever. We could also do maybe in the same sentence and see what comes up. So I'm going to actually, let me run this as a new search. And you see eructations, fever during, and antimonium crudum is there, but not antimonium tart. The other way is we could even limit this to ant tart. You could go here and you could say remedy. We could do.
Rupali, would you also want to maybe filter for abdomen irritations, 3 fever?
I could, but I already did. I mean, if my mind is already heading towards a particular remedy, and I did a reverse repertory search and I found only one rubric in abdomen for eructations. If I was looking for a general remedy and I hadn't decided on a remedy, right now I'm just trying to prove that ant tart would be a good choice. But yes, so for example, when we did the reverse repertory, I did go to abdomen for ant tart, and I saw that there was only one rubric, you see. So I'm just showing how you can start a search broad. And so I started a search that was really specific to my patient and I didn't come up with anything. So then I went to a broader search and now I'm narrowing down because it seems what my patient needs is ant tart. And I'm trying to make sure that the prominent symptoms that are there are covered by the remedy. So that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. But yes, for sure, we could run eructations within 3 words of fever / influenza. I could have done that actually in the beginning, but I was really thinking influenza. And so I wasn't thinking fever. But, you know, this is also a good search to run. And I think that, so I think I already limited. No, I didn't save it possibly. So let's go here and I will type I and then go to reference library, remedy. I. And then I could probably, I have not tried this. Have you tried this, Lucy, where we just put 2 sections in?
It doesn't work there on the line, but it works in the filter. Yeah.
Okay. So if I was to put stomach section and then put abdomen section, it wouldn't work. I
No, you
haven't
have to
tried
do
that.
just one at a time in that.
Oh, okay. I see.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's run this and see what comes up. So nothing comes up for antimonium tart and nothing comes up. So, and what if I take out influenza? And so nothing comes up and nothing comes up. So let's see. Now we could run. You see, the thing is, I already know that nothing will come up if I limit it to ant tart.
What if you put eructations and filter it for ant tart, yeah, up there in the top and just see what comes up?
We could do that. See, that's another way. So now, eructations, offensive, painful, water brash, deathly, with deathly nausea, regurgitation. So nothing here that, so I'm trying to look for a connection with fever. That's really what it is. Nothing. That's looking reliable because that's, I like that. So eructations, so obviously there's tons. Acrid, fluid, food, milk, nauseous, offensive, etc., regurgitation, frequent, night, painful. Okay. Let's see. Nope. So let's do flatus. Run that as a separate search for ant tart. And if we go here, so nothing for fever specifically. Let's look at the reliable. Okay. So there's plenty of flatus rubrics and there's plenty of eructation rubrics, but I can't. And so at this point, I had to start the webinar that we're doing now. But I haven't been able to find a connection between fever or flu and sort of an increase in eructations and flatus. But for ant tart, but for sure, some of those other symptoms are there for ant tart. Appetite lost, empty feeling, and nausea during influenza. So I will continue to see if that's the right remedy, but that's where my head is at. And probably, after a few more searches, I might still end up going with ant tart for this patient. But so this was sort of more to show you how to look for rubrics and how to sort of craft a search. The other place to look at maybe would be here. I would also look in, so when all the searches in the repertory fail and I can't find what I'm looking for, then I start searching in the reference library because that, has access to a much greater body of literature, clinical or otherwise. So that's what I would do. So that's what I had to show you for today. I don't know if there are any questions, Lucy.
Yes, Peggy has asked about a certain rubric,
Mhm.
about a rash located between the thigh and the genitals. And she's wondering if in the fold there, in that
Yeah,
fold. And
yeah.
she's wondering, could it possibly be in more than one chapter? Maybe generalities, extremities, male chapter.
So it depends. You see,
And
yeah. I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it. if the rash is only there, and even in the past for the patient has never appeared anywhere else, then probably it makes sense to focus on that specific area between the genitals and the thigh. But there are rubrics about rashes and urticaria in the folds of the skin. So you can definitely step back from that specific location and look for folds of the skin. And then you could also step back even further and maybe look at, generalities or just things in the folds of the skin, not just a rash. So the other thing is, obviously, rash is not a common word in the repertory. So I always ask patients to define what kind of rash it is, if it's urticaria or eruptions, if there are eruptions, or if it's flat and it's just discoloration and there's no sensation. So it's really helpful. Otherwise, in general, rash ends up being translated as urticaria, which may or may not be right. But as everyone might know, in the skin chapter, there's a huge range of eruptions of any kind. But the rubric will start with eruptions, and then it specifies whether it's urticaria or miliary or what kind of eruptions they are. So I would probably start with eruptions within 3 words of, let's go with folds. And we can make it in the skin chapter. So let's see what comes
You've
up.
got the filter for Aunt T on still.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So here, let's run that. So you see eruptions discharging moist, which may not be, but eruptions folds in. We could also look at extremities. Top extremities, and run that as a separate search. So extremities, eruptions, eczema, itching folds, and there's nothing anywhere else really. I would also possibly look at lower limbs. So you see there's all kinds of eruptions, or, so it depends what the rash is. In general, if you're looking at urticaria, then maybe it would be better to go with urticaria. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of rubrics around this. So this is a big rubric. You might want to consider this in addition to the folds, the ones we found here. But you see, these are only 2 remedies. Here, also 2 common remedies. So let's go back here.
Peggy's given some more details. It's red, itchy, only in the fold. It's a 7-year-old who was diagnosed as fungal rash, but the antifungal cream has not helped.
Okay. So we could try, I think, so let's look at, see what comes up. Eruptions, fungal, only on the head. That's it. So we might have to look at Only in the folds, right?
Right. Red, itchy, only on the fold.
Okay, so eruptions within 2 words of red, within 2 words of itchy. And we can look at, so you can look at skin. I'll run that. So this is not bad as a rubric, but you would have to, so these are much more descriptive. And so that's eruptions, red, rash, itching. Interestingly, the 2 antimoniums are there and mesarium.
Diana makes a comment. She's wondering, it was diagnosed as fungal. Or is it linked with herpes zoster? I know herpes zoster is in quite a few rubrics as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could, we could definitely do herpetic. Let's see, within 3 words of fold. Let's see what comes up. No result. Let's make this 2. It's probably nothing in the folds. Although let's try. Let's run this again. And no result. No. Okay. So eruptions, herpetic.
And also to look at the quality. Is it a burning? Is there burning pain? It's red and itchy, yes, but is there a sensation involved? These are just suggestions that people.
Yeah. So, yes. So it definitely, there will not be a single rubric that will capture all of those qualities. So, you might end up, I would say, I would still stay with extremities. Extremities. And then you could, create, so here, so extremities, eruptions, herpetic, and then you could say eruptions, red. So now, of course, you have, that's not, okay, so red, and 2 words of itchy or itch. Let's try that instead. You've got extremities, eruptions, red, itching. You could also take legs. And let's see what the reliable has. So reliable has a lot, as I said, for acute. Only 2 remedies here. And then we also had, let's see here. Could try that, see if it's, see what. Same. Eruptions general folds in. Those are the only, so it'll be interesting to see. Let's see if there are any eruptions in, well, it's clearly a fungal rash, so there's no point looking in generalities. Itchy. So I would also ask about itchy, how itchy is it? Is he scratching all the time? What helps? Cold compress or hot shower or things like that. But, So it doesn't help that, two of those rubrics have only 2 remedies. But otherwise, Miserium comes up. I don't know that remedy, Phagopyrum esculentum. But calc, but then you want to see if it's a 7-year-old, you can probably look for other calc qualities before giving calc. But Miserium, calc, Miserium, hepar, also sepia. But yeah, the folds, let's actually see. I want to go back here and see what comes up in the reference library. Yeah, hepar and sepia, jade, but it's not well indicated. So I don't know if I would consider jade, and hepar and sepia is something that most people have or can be easily acquired. So I wouldn't look at that one. We would definitely need more, some more information, but if it's eruptions, herpetic, and then the folds, there isn't really much. Another one that I know just from clinical experience and the materia medica, although it's not showing up here, is graphites, is a good one for eruptions in the folds of the skin. And it's a good skin remedy regardless. So that might be something to consider.
And Peggy did give some modalities. She said that it's worse with water and bathing. So then you would,
Yes, yes.
or even eruptions connected to aggravated by water and bathing.
Eruption. So let's see. Aggravation with 2 words of water / bathing. Let's see what comes up here. So that's phase. And I would look at extremities. You see eruptions, bathing, washing, aggravates. There's 10 remedies. And so now then the differentiation between hot and cold water. So we would just take the bigger rubric. And let's see. Sorinum. Bar. Yeah, unfortunately, there's no good collection here of qualities around. It's no clustering around the same remedies. It's brought up different remedies now. Morgan Pure and Sorinum. So I would get rid of the small rubrics because here. And so now these are all, okay, red itching. So the other thing, headache. So I would also look at eruptions, red itching. I think the reliable rubrics were very descriptive and not straightforward. So bathing, red itching, herpetic. So with those 3 rubrics, is there any other strong characteristic symptom that you want to add, or do you think that this covers the situation? The main thing obviously is the location, and so we haven't really focused on that. We could look at, so let me get rid of some of these tabs here.
Peggy had asked earlier if it's possible to use something from the male chapter in this instance, since it is so close to genitalia.
Yeah. So what I was going to do is see eruptions herpetic is the other thing would be to type, look at the section and look at eruptions. And I would just do eruptions to do a broader search and then see what comes up. So of course there's eruptions, eczema, elevated, fine, herpetic. We could try this. Extending to thighs, genitals and thighs between. Here's a really good one. And there's a carbon remedy here that's really strong. And graphites is in here too. So now itching, could do that. It's more general. Miliary, moist, nodules, location, the kind. I think that's good actually. So let's see if we get more clustering. So petroleum and graphites are in the top 3. I would consider those for sure. Also, if you argue that you've got, let's see, itching, we've got itching covered, but not red. So if you were to take, and we've got male eruptions herpetic, so then I would take out extremities eruptions herpetic. And we've got male eruptions itching, so I would take out extremities. Bathing, washing aggravates, you probably want to keep that. Unless we have, let's go here and see if there's eruptions within forwards of bathing / washing. Let's see if something comes up here. No. Okay, so I would keep the extremities then for the aggravation. And now petroleum and graphites are the top 2. Graphites doesn't cover the aggravation, but it covers the herpetic eruptions, the location. And this is really important, so I would probably make that a 4. And I would say most rubrics considering intensity. And you get petroleum as the lead. I would try that, Peggy. Any other suggestions that came up on how to refine that?
No, but Peggy did share that she tried sulfur. It didn't work. She also tried petroleum. She did try it and it did not work.
Okay.
So maybe look
So
at
eruptions, bathing. So let's try this as a search on its own, regardless of where. To look at here, eruptions, bathing, washing aggravates. There. See what that does. Yeah, so I guess graphites doesn't cover the bathing, washing aggravates.
Considering Morgan Pura, it is on the graph there, covered by.
Yeah, and it came up in the earlier, sort of before we cut things out. Morgan Pure came up before as well. So there's Natromur's been there for a while. In the new one, Lycopodium, Eupatorium, sulfur you tried. Sepia's been there from the beginning, and it also comes up for the folds. So it'd be worth trying. And then Morgan is there. I would also try graphites. Try graphites, because petroleum is really about very, very dry skin in the winter. I don't know. I would try graphites before looking at some of these others. Sulfur, see there's 4 sulfur, but we're doing a different strategy. If we went with most rubrics, sulfur would be probably further up. Yep, number 2. If I remove the intensity piece of it, then sulfur comes up as number 2, but you've tried that. So you've tried petroleum and sulfur. Then you've got graph. And sepia is still there. Sepia has moved up to 5. You could just combine those. Stars. Thuya. Thuya might be a good one too. You know, they have eruptions on covered parts, hidden areas. But there's some choices here to consider. Okay, what else?
No other questions at this time.
Oh, okay. So good. Anyway, so we focused today on finding rubrics and trying to craft a broader search and then going from there to try different things. As you can see, I mean, there's even when I start with something, or anyone who's really familiar with the program starts with something, there's no clear trail to follow. It's a fishing expedition. So like I showed with that influenza case, you're looking for an answer that makes sense from a materia medica standpoint, from your repertorization and what your own clinical experience. You're putting it all together to find something that's right for the patient. And so just start with the most important, crucial words that that the patient uses, and then sort of follow the trail and see and try different things. And we had, I don't know, like 10 searches up here, until you come with a collection of something that feels good. And if you're really stuck, you can always send us emails and we'll respond within a day. And some of those questions might also be good to bring up in sessions like this and might help other people. So I'll leave you with those words. We can end a little bit early since there aren't any more questions, and I've kind of presented the things that I came with. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.